If you think that doing upholstery for some of your woodworking projects is difficult, then stick around and watch this video because I was able to do this upholstery for a entryway bench that I made for my mom, and it's really not that difficult whatsoever. Once you see it, you're going to want to go and give it a try yourself. And I'll leave a link up top for the actual video on when I built this bench. So next up is putting the upholstery on the seat for this bench. And I'm going to use some 1-inch thick Dacron for it. It's a polyester fill that is used for upholstery. And what we're going to do is allow approximately 6 inches of extra material. We'll cut off the excess later, but that allows 2 3/4 of an inch, or roughly say 3 inches for the thickness of the seat, and a few inches to be able to staple it. And like I say, we'll trim it off later. The way we're going to cut this is we're going to follow my diagram, and we're going to basically remove all of the shaded area that's here. And hopefully that's going to show up on camera, but we're going to remove all that shaded area. The bench itself, or the thickness of the foam, is 2 3/4 of an inch when you factor in the 3/4 of an inch plywood backer that we're going to use. So we're going to draw some additional marks on here, and essentially we're going to work on a 45-degree angle here. So somewhere along in here we're going to be removing basically all of this in order for this to fold nice and neatly around the corners. We're only going to make some cuts in a few places here, but let's kind of get this going so that this works. So we'll cut up here all the way to our line right there. And the same here, we'll cut all the way up to our line. This line here is the one I mean, the top one, because that's right in line with the foam. Now, we do want to remove this piece, so we can get rid of it right now. And we do want to remove all of this on the one side, but essentially this is going to wrap like so. And we want to be able to have a 45-degree angle here, which is that one that we've drawn on there. And I'm going to assume that it's in the right place, so we'll just cut it right off. I estimated that 45-degree angle. It's not exact, and it doesn't necessarily have to be, but I think you get the idea there. And then we'll wrap the other side up and over, and we'll have a nice fold here, and we'll be able to tuck this in and staple it so that we get a nice finished edge. And then we'll go ahead and do the same kind of a thing with the fabric once we get to that stage. I did go ahead and mark the other corners so I know where to make the cuts once we get there, but let's start to wrap this first, because every video that I've seen on this type of thing talks about getting the actual Dacron in place first before you deal with the corners. The same with the material that you're going to use also. So I'm only going to keep it about a 1/2 inch from the edge. And then similarly the ends, you want to get the ends in place as well. I do think we're close to this line that I made here on a 45 already, so we're going to cut right on it. See how close we actually are. Actually, that's pretty much right on where we need to be. And by doing this, you keep this level all the same so that you haven't got a big bunch or a big bulge like a little mountain peak in there somewhere. Now, because you've got this extra bit of thickness here, you may want to add some extra tension. Look at this line and make sure that it's nice and straight. Now, I'm not certain, but maybe before I'm completely finished with this, I might trim this little peak off of the side here. We'll see how that looks once the fabric goes on after, but for now, that's kind of got this corner finished, and we'll do the same to the other 3. Now that we got all the corners finished, we'll just go around and trim off the excess, and I'm just going to keep it about a 1/2 inch inside all of these staples all the way around. And there you have it. I went ahead off camera and I drew a center line on my fabric, both on the long end and on the short side here, so that I would be able to know exactly where the middle is. This fabric has a bit of a linear pattern to it, and I want to make sure that those lines stay very perpendicular to the front and back edges of this bench. I also went ahead and drew some other reference lines on the back of the material, similar to how I've done the lines that would have been on the fiber fill or the Dacron, and I'm just got those on there more for reference more than anything, as well as some lines on the back of this plywood so that I'll be able to get the tension the same all the way along it. So I'm trying to stretch things right to this one pencil line here just to keep things nice and even. Now, in order to get these staples at a set distance from the edge, I've actually drawn on a little black Sharpie line on my stapler, which is going to go right along the edge of the upholstery so that I can keep these staples in a nice straight, neat line. Not necessary, but I just want those staples to be away from where the stretchers are so they don't lay on them. I'm going to try and demonstrate how to fold a corner on this seat. And I was using a YouTube video that I'll put a link in the description down below so that you can follow that video because it's really good. They talked about putting a 45-degree line on the corner of your workpiece or your base so that you could use that to kind of work towards and cut material away so that you're not having too much bulk, and making this corner thick so that it sits up on like the leg of the bench when you're all finished. Cut down close to your corner, not all the way into your corner, then you'll have a pretty good start on being able to fold this corner. And I'm going to stop just maybe a half an inch before the actual end of the plywood backing board for this seat. The other thing they were talking about was taking your material and kind of getting a nice fold in it so that it's going all the way up along the edge like this. And at about a half an inch from that fold, you want to cut straight down parallel to that fold. Now I'm going to go maybe a little bit more than that so that I'm away from it, just because they recommend doing this in stages so that you don't cut away too much material and kind of end up behind the 8-ball before you're all finished. Sometimes just doing things in little small stages can be a humongous help. And I'm going to just come in here and cut like so. And because we've got that cut pretty close to this 45-degree line, I think I'm going to staple it down in that position just to start holding it in place so that I actually can have an easier time finishing this up. I'm trying to keep a nice straight line along the edge here. Now the next thing you got to do is fold this over. And once again, you got to remove some of this excess material because it's just going to get in the way and add bulk. Start to work this. Now we're going to want this to come up obviously inside of that plywood, not way inside. You want it to be making a fold right along the corner as best you can. It just takes a few repositions here and there in order to get that to go where you want it to go. And a bit of folding and tucking with your finger in that corner. So let's tack that down and see what it looks like. So the last thing you have to do is try to get rid of these wrinkles and folds and so on. You just got to kind of work at it and try and pull it in such a way that you can eliminate those folds and try and keep a straight line along the side. And that's why we drew some pencil lines on the back of this seat originally. But as you work that, you will find a spot where that material just almost wants to go and lay on its own. Good, so I think that's got it. Yep, there you have it. That's one comfy bench, and you can build this yourself too. So until next time, go build something beautiful.